I never imagined that a simple hiking trip would turn into the most terrifying day of my life. The morning started like any other, with crisp air filling my lungs and the soft crunch of leaves beneath my boots. My daughter and her husband seemed cheerful, their laughter echoing through the trees. But deep down, I could not shake an odd feeling, a subtle tension, a hidden agenda behind their smiles. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was just nerves, the excitement of exploring new trails. As we climbed higher, the path became steeper, the forest quieter, and my unease grew. Then it happened, an unexpected slip, a sudden push that sent me tumbling down a rocky incline. Pain exploded through my body, and for a moment, I thought this was the end. But even in that excruciating moment, my mind raced, piecing together the shocking truth. This was not an accident. They had planned this. My own daughter, the person I trusted above all, and her husband, trying to take everything from me, all for a sum of money they thought would be theirs. I lay there, wounded but alive, feeling a strange clarity wash over me. Fear mingled with determination. I realized survival was only the first step. No, I had to stay calm, gather evidence, and outsmart them. Because if I did not, they would get away with everything. Before we dive deeper into this story of betrayal, survival, and justice, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Trust me, you do not want to miss a single moment of this unbelievable journey. Pain radiated through every inch of my body as I lay against the jagged rocks, the sharp scent of pine and earth mixing with the metallic tang of my own blood. The world seemed to tilt and spin. Yet somehow, I forced myself to remain still, letting the initial shock wash over me instead of succumbing to it. Every instinct screamed to move, to flee. But I knew that a rash reaction could be fatal. That panic would only hand them the victory they were so desperate to claim. Through the haze of agony, I forced my eyes open, scanning the trail above me. The familiar trees now twisted into shapes of betrayal. The crunch of footsteps and the distant murmurs reached me, fragments of conversation that I pieced together with a chilling clarity, realizing just how deep their plan went. My own daughter, the person I had held closest to my heart, and her husband, someone I had barely trusted, had orchestrated this moment with meticulous care. The estate, the money, the security of my life, all of it had driven them to this unspeakable act, and it became unbearably clear nothing would have stopped them from following through if the situation had been different. As I lay there, unable to fully move, a strange calmness settled over me, an icy clarity that cut through the haze of pain. I could feel each fracture, each bruise, each searing line of agony, as though my body were betraying me in turn. Yet my mind sharpened in response to the treachery around me. I remembered the smiles, the casual words, the seemingly innocent gestures of the morning, and every memory now twisted into evidence of deception. They had masked their intentions behind laughter and polite conversation, treating me like a guest in a family I thought I knew. And now every step they had taken, every word they had spoken, revealed the premeditated cruelty I had never imagined. It was staggering, the way betrayal could hide in plain sight, and yet here I was, painfully aware, alive, and breathing while the architects of my suffering believed their plan had succeeded. Time stretched, each second a struggle against both the pain and the creeping despair that threatened to swallow me. But in the stillness, I began to map my options. I assessed the incline, the stability of the rocks beneath me, the distance to the nearest trail, and the likelihood of someone passing by who might help. It became a mental exercise of survival, a puzzle of movement and strategy in which every thought mattered. Every calculation could mean the difference between life and death. The realization of betrayal, as sharp and heavy as the pain in my limbs, fueled a determination I had not known I possessed, and I understood that awareness alone might save me. I could not afford anger or tears. Those would betray weakness. I had to transform my shock into strategy, my fear into endurance, and my pain into focus. Hours seemed to fold into one another as I lingered there, hidden beneath shadows. Every sound above me a reminder of how close I had come to losing everything. The sunlight filtered through the canopy, shifting patterns across the rocks and leaves like the hands of a clock, marking not just time, but the slow process of realization, of understanding the depth of treachery, and of plotting the steps that would follow. Each beat of my heart, each shallow breath, reinforced the truth that I had survived, that I was still in control in a situation designed to strip me of it, and that the next moves, deliberate and precise, would be mine alone. In the quiet of the forest, amidst pain and betrayal, I embraced the clarity that survival brought, knowing that from this precarious position, I could begin to reclaim everything they had sought to take. After the fall, when every bone screamed in protest and the world seemed too sharp and too heavy to endure, I knew that I had survived against impossible odds, and that survival became my silent weapon. I returned home under the guise of needing rest, concealing the truth of the day's horrors from anyone who might ask questions, knowing full well that the eyes of betrayal were closer than I imagined. Every step across my familiar floors, every sound of the creaking stairs, reminded me that this house once a sanctuary was now a stage for a deadly performance I had narrowly escaped. I moved carefully, deliberately, my every motion calculated not just for comfort but for concealment, setting up hidden cameras and microphones with meticulous attention to angles and placement, capturing the flow of life in the home I thought I knew, while keeping my own presence undetected. Each piece of equipment was a thread in the web I began to weave, a net intended not just to observe but to reveal the depth of deceit that had been aimed at me. And as I worked, a quiet determination settled over me, the kind that made hours stretch into meaningful labor and transformed fear into strategy. I began to track everything, the casual mentions of errands, the suspicious handling of bank statements left carelessly on counters, the almost imperceptible gestures that, in hindsight, spoke volumes about the plan that had been designed to strip me of everything I had built. The recordings captured the hushed conversations, the planning sessions disguised as mundane dialogue, and even the subtle manipulations of finances that had been intended to make me appear negligent or incapable. Each playback revealed layers of intent I had not been able to perceive in the moment of shock, turning my home into a repository of truth, a vault of evidence against those who had once claimed to love me. The more I observed, the more I realized that survival was not merely about being alive, but about reclaiming power in a space where betrayal had once seemed absolute, and every captured whisper, every documented action, became a silent testimony to the audacity of their plan. Days and nights blurred as I monitored the movements, recorded the inconsistencies, and pieced together the financial threads they had attempted to weave into a narrative against me. I learned to move silently through my own house, to watch without being seen, and to remain patient, knowing that every recorded interaction, every carefully preserved bank statement, would eventually speak louder than any confrontation could. The awareness that I was unseen, that my survival granted me the advantage they had sought to erase, fueled a quiet satisfaction, a sense of control that balanced the residual pain still etched into my body. The betrayal I had suffered was no longer merely a wound. It became a lens through which I understood human ambition, desperation, and greed. And through that understanding, I was able to anticipate, to predict, and to prepare. Through this process, I transformed the house into a sanctuary not only of memory but of strategy, where every object, every room, and every shadow was a witness to the truth I had survived to expose. The audacity that had nearly cost me my life now became the basis for a plan of my own, one built not on impulse or revenge, but on clarity, evidence, and the undeniable reality that I had endured what they had thought would destroy me. And in the quiet moments, when the cameras silently recorded and the soft hum of equipment filled the corners of rooms, I understood that survival had given me more than life, it had given me perspective, patience, and the tools to ensure that truth would not remain hidden, and that the betrayal, meticulously plotted and executed, would be unveiled in its full, undeniable clarity. As the evidence mounted in the quiet corners of my home, I realized that patience alone would not be enough to counter the intricate web of betrayal that had been spun around me. Action, precise and deliberate, was required to turn the tables without exposing myself prematurely. I spent long hours analyzing the financial patterns, the subtle manipulations, the fabricated claims that had been constructed to make me appear careless and undeserving of what was rightfully mine. And slowly, a plan began to crystallize. Using the knowledge I had painstakingly gathered, I composed a message to the insurance company, crafting it carefully to highlight inconsistencies, suspicious activities, and potential fraud without revealing my identity, knowing that any hint of my presence could tip the scales against me. The thrill of wielding such quiet power was tempered by the knowledge of how dangerous missteps could be. And yet the thought of disrupting the scheme, of watching the very mechanisms that had sought to destroy me grind to a halt, brought a sharp clarity to my actions. Once sent, I waited. Not impatiently, but with a tense awareness that every day, every hour, the house remained a theater of deception. The insurance company, acting with due diligence, froze the payout, halting the flow of funds and casting a shadow of uncertainty over the Wills reading. I observed this subtle tension that began to creep into their interactions, the hushed conversations that grew more strained, the glances exchanged with a newfound caution that had not existed before, and I felt a quiet vindication as their carefully constructed plan began to unravel in real time. It was remarkable to see how a single, anonymous action, grounded in truth and evidence, could disrupt an entire narrative they had spent months trying to solidify, and I allowed myself the satisfaction of knowing that the betrayal they had plotted with such precision was now meeting an equally measured response. From the shadows of my own home, I watched as the web of deception strained under the weight of scrutiny I had introduced. The delays forced them into a state of unease, disrupting routines, forcing reconsideration, and subtly sowing doubt in their minds about the inevitability of their victory. Every recorded conversation, every intercepted document, every careful note I had taken became a silent testament, not only to their audacity but to the meticulous care with which I had prepared to confront it. I understood, more clearly than ever, that power need not be loud or visible to be effective. The quiet, invisible hand of evidence and patience could accomplish what confrontation often could not. And in that understanding, I found a deep sense of agency I had feared lost in the chaos of betrayal. As the days passed, I observed the shifting dynamics, the ways in which their confidence faltered, the tentative adjustments they made in response to delays that seemed almost arbitrary to them, and I realized that the anonymous intervention had done more than just freeze funds. It had unsettled the narrative they had assumed would unfold according to their design. The house, once a stage for their schemes, had become a silent arena of strategy, with every recorded whisper and every documented irregularity forming an invisible force that guided the outcome in my favor. I remained vigilant, knowing that patience, preparation, and precise timing were the trinity of power in a battle defined by deception. and I watched with careful attention as the slow, deliberate unraveling of their plot began to mirror the clarity and control I had painstakingly restored to my own life. In this quiet victory, I recognized that survival had given me more than life, it had given me leverage, foresight, and the undeniable proof that even the most audacious betrayals could be met with equally deliberate and unstoppable response. The house had become a theater of silent tension, and I, hidden within the folds of ordinary life, had assumed the role of an invisible director, orchestrating every subtle tremor of fear that would ripple through the people who had once plotted my end. I moved with careful calculation, donning disguises that allowed me to appear at the edges of their vision without recognition. Leaving notes, sending anonymous messages, and creating small, unsettling disruptions that hinted at a presence they could neither see nor comprehend. Each sound at night, each misplaced object, each fleeting shadow was meticulously designed to sow doubt in their minds, to fracture the confidence that had once made them bold enough to conspire against me. I watched their interactions grow strained, their conversations laced with unease, as if some unseen force had begun to unravel the certainty they had so arrogantly clung to. Every movement I made was calculated not for confrontation, but for psychological precision. I knew that the subtler the manipulation, the deeper the fear would burrow, and the more likely it would be that their own mistrust of each other would intensify. I monitored their routines, noting the predictable rhythms and using those patterns to craft moments of disruption that seemed almost random yet carried a quiet, unmistakable intent. Anonymous letters appeared with innocuous warnings. Unexpected deliveries seemed to arrive from nowhere, and even the occasional sound in the walls or flicker of a light became part of an invisible pressure I applied with careful consistency. The effect was immediate and undeniable. Whispered suspicions, paranoid glances, and the slow erosion of the calm composure they had once worn like armor now gave way to hesitation and self-doubt. In this delicate game of shadows, I became the embodiment of unpredictability, a presence that could not be confronted yet could not be ignored. And the knowledge that they were constantly under observation added a weight to their every action that could not be shaken off. I took pleasure in watching the way they second-guessed even the smallest decisions, in the way minor mistakes sparked heated exchanges, and in the way their mutual trust, the very foundation of their conspiracy, began to crumble from within. Each anonymous communication, each carefully staged incident, each hint of surveillance worked in concert to remind them that control had shifted, that the power they thought they wielded was an illusion, and that the very scheme they had believed would succeed without question was now a house of cards trembling under invisible hands. Yet even as I applied these pressures, I remained mindful of balance, understanding that overplaying my hand could expose me or provoke reckless action that might jeopardize everything I had carefully orchestrated. Every move was measured, every moment observed, every response cataloged to guide the next intervention. The fear I instilled was not cruelty but strategy, a necessary counterweight to the audacity they had shown in attempting to take everything from me. In the silent shadows, I found clarity, patience, and a deep satisfaction in watching justice unfold in its quietest, most precise form, knowing that the very people who had sought to destroy me were now prisoners of their own paranoia, endlessly haunted by a presence they could neither see nor escape, and that the invisible threads of observation and subtle manipulation had given me the upper hand in a battle they had thought would be theirs by design. When the moment finally arrived for me to step out of the shadows, I felt no fear, no hesitation, only a steady calm that had been forged through every painful step of this journey. I invited them to my home under the pretense of discussing unresolved legal matters. Watching their guarded expressions as they crossed the threshold, unaware that the walls around held months of truth they could no longer outrun, The silence between us felt heavy, stretched thin by the secrets they believed were still safe. Then I stepped forward. No disguises. No shadows. Just myself alive. Standing and fully aware of all they had done. The shock on their faces was almost surreal. Disbelief collided with terror as they realized that the plan they had counted on had not only failed, it had been exposed in every detail. I laid everything out with quiet precision. The recordings, the documents, the financial manipulations, the whispered conversations captured in the very rooms where they now stood. Every lie they had crafted unraveled under the weight of irrefutable evidence, each piece fitting together in a narrative they could no longer deny. I watched their confidence collapse as the truth spread across the table between us, undeniable and complete. They tried to speak, to twist the story, to grasp at excuses that no longer held any power. But the evidence spoke louder than either of them ever could. And then, as the final layer of denial gave it a panic, the authorities stepped inside, summoned at the precise moment when the truth was laid bare. There was no dramatic struggle, no final outburst, only resignation as they were led away, leaving behind the hollow shell of a scheme that had consumed their lives. In the days that followed, I met with my lawyer to revise the will they had been so desperate to manipulate. With a clarity born from betrayal, I redirected the entirety of my estate to charities that supported resilience, education, and protection for those who had no one to defend them. It felt like a quiet restoration of balance, a way to ensure that the legacy they had tried to steal would instead become a force for good. They would gain nothing, no inheritance, no control, no victory, only the consequences of their own choices. Standing at my window one evening, watching the last light fade behind the trees, I felt something I had not known since that terrible day on the trail. Peace, not the fragile peace of avoidance, but the steady kind that comes from reclaiming your life, your truth, and your voice. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found this journey as compelling as it was cathartic to share, I invite you to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that dive deep into the human experience. Your support means the world, and I look forward to bringing you more content soon.